souls. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Carolyn and this channel is all about true crime, mystery, and anything abnormal. Highly recommend subscribing because this channel is definitely a vibe. About a week ago, Netflix released a show called The Asunta Case. Netflix, they did a dramatized version of the true crime case. So what I'm going to do today is go through all of the factual information of this case. I will say that the dramatized version that Netflix did release is extremely close to the real story with a few differences. And the biggest thing about this case that seems to be, I guess, the most confusing, the most mysterious is the motive. I myself think the motive is crystal clear, and I'm going to get into it and tell you why. This case takes place in Santiago, Spain. It's about the murder of a 12-year-old girl named Asunta. And the opening scene is it shows the actors playing out a real interview that the parents did. So Asunta was adopted from China, and she was the first Chinese adoption in Santiago. So when she was adopted as a baby, the parents were interviewed and asked, questions to do with the adoption and why they chose to adopt from China. And something really significant that the father said, which I believe 100% is a lie, is he said, "We just wanted a healthy baby. The gender of the baby, it didn't matter." And I call BS on that. The gender of the child they adopted was the motive of why this little girl was murdered at 12-year old by her parents. Asunta was born in China in 2000, and in 2000, China still had the one-child policy. And I'm sure most of you know about the one-child policy that was in place in China. The Chinese government decided in 1979, in a way to reduce overpopulation, that each family in China was only allowed to have one child. Now, this law was controversial for many reasons, but what ended up happening is that if parents were only allowed to have one child, they wanted sons. They wanted sons to carry on the family name. Dramatic eye roll for the patriarchy, but that was what ended up happening. So in China, all of these baby girls would be abandoned because if parents could only have one child, they wanted to make sure that it was a boy. If they had a girl, they weren't really interested. So when Asunta was born in 2000, she was put up for adoption. The parents who ended up adopting Asunta was Rosario and Alfonso, and they were both Spaniards. And in the scene that I'm talking about, where the father says, "We don't care if it was a boy or girl," I think he cared a lot that it was a girl. And I think that they chose to adopt from China because it was pretty much a guarantee that they would get a girl. Now, as to why I have such strong beliefs that the father wanted a girl, we'll get into a little bit later. If you know anything about this case, or if you've watched the Netflix special, there were a lot of really creepy pictures of Asunta on her father's laptop, Alfonso. Now, Alfonso, he also had videos, inappropriate, vile, and they were very specific to Asian girls. So I firmly believe that Asunta was adopted because they wanted, more specifically, the father wanted a young Asian girl. And that is exactly what he got. Now, at the beginning, when Asunta was adopted, everything seemed to be going really well. As I had mentioned, the family, they lived in Santiago. Both of the parents had really good jobs. They were making good money. And Asunta, she was doing absolutely amazing. She had so many interests and she was so talented. She loved dancing. She loved playing musical instruments. She loved doing art, and she was very, very intelligent in school. And she even was able to skip a grade because she was such an intelligent child. The parents, Rosario and Alfonso, they had met in 1990 and they ended up getting married in 1996. They did try to have a child of their own, but they had difficulty conceiving. So that's what led to them deciding to adopt a child. And in 2000, the child they adopted was Asunta. During the summer of 2013, Rosario and Alfonso started going through some really hard times in their marriage. First, Rosario's mother passed away, and then 7 months later, her father passed away as well. And just to go into a little about Rosario, is she was very intelligent, she was very accomplished, but she did have a lot of mental health issues. And whenever it is spoken about Rosario and what her intentions behind her involvement in the murder of her daughter Asunta, she's spoken a lot about that she was very narcissistic. And when I tried to go and dig a bit deeper into, okay, how do you decide that she was a narcissist? Because narcissist gets thrown around a lot nowadays, and don't get me wrong, there are a lot of true narcissists, but I was curious as to what led people to believe that she was narcissistic. And from what I researched and found out about Rosario is that she had attempted to self-exit several times. And this was viewed as being very selfish. And I think the misunderstanding of mental illness is where a lot of the judgment comes in with the mother. Now, don't get me wrong, she does participate and murder her daughter, so she's a horrible person. But really looking at the mother and the father and how did the two of them come together to make this decision that they were going to end the life of their daughter. And I think it's pretty clear to say that if you think someone attempts to self-exit and that makes them selfish, you obviously have no education in mental illness at all. And I don't know if this was sort of a general belief in Spain at the time, or if it was the particular police and people surrounding Rosario that felt this way. I'm not sure where this kind of basic not having any knowledge of mental illness. I'm not sure exactly where that came from and exactly who was involved in it and whether it was a bigger cultural belief or not. But with the mother, her mental illness plays a big part in what ends up happening. So after both of Rosario's parents had passed away, she had a very bad, they referred to it as a nervous breakdown. We would normally refer to it as a major depressive episode. And she was hospitalized. She was very, very unwell. And she was prescribed a medication, lorazepam. Now, this medication will become very, very important in the murder of Asunta. Lorazepam, it's a benzodiazepine medication, which is basically a sedative. If you've heard me speak before, I have mental health issues myself, and I take a medication that's sort of in the same family. And it's a medication that you would take if you were having a panic attack or having extremely bad anxiety, and it basically sedates you. So just to be clear, one pill will sedate you. Asunta, when she was murdered, the level in her body, she consumed 23 pills. So before I get too far ahead of myself in the story, both of her parents have just passed away. She is her mental health is not in a good place at all. And she ends up having an affair on her husband. And her husband ends up finding out he goes through her computer and he goes through her emails, and he sees an email that she sent to the man she's having an affair with. So the two of them separate at this time. So after Alfonso finds out about the affair, he decides to move out of the home and separate from his wife. He gets an apartment, and it's very close by the family home that Rosario and Asunta stayed living in. In September, Asunta then was back spending most of her time with her parents, and she had gone back to school. Unfortunately, a few weeks after she had started back at school, on September 21st, 2013, at 10:17 p.m., Asunta's parents contacted the police to say that Asunta was missing. So the police, obviously, the first thing they do is they want to interview the parents. And they speak with Rosario, the mother. And Rosario said that at around 7 p.m., Asunta was at home at their house in Santiago, and she was working on her homework. Rosario then said she had left Asunta home alone, and she had drove about 20 minutes away to a country home that the family owned because she wanted to pick up some swimsuits. She then claimed that she returned to Santiago at 9:30 p.m. and Asunta was gone. She then says that she called Asunta's father, Alfonso, and she just started calling around to see if anyone knew where Asunta was. But the truth was, the only people who knew where Asunta was her mother, Rosario, and her father, Alfonso. Initially, police believed Rosario and assumed that the story that she had told police was correct. But they're still going to obviously investigate. And that was when the police ended up finding CCTV footage. And in this footage, it shows, I'll put in a picture here of the CCTV footage. What the police ended up seeing in this photo was Rosario leaving at the time she told police that she had left to go to their vacation home. But the only problem was Asunta was in the car with her. And I'll insert a picture here of the CCTV footage showing Asunta in the car. So right away, police find out that the story that Rosario, her mother, is telling is not true. So the police go and get as much of the CCTV footage as they can. On the CCTV footage, they can see that Asunta, she was walking past a bank around 2 p.m., which would have shown her walking from the home she lived in, the family home, to her father's apartment. It then showed Asunta returning home at around 5:20. So it appears as though at 2 p.m. she went to her father's apartment. Around 5:20, she left her father's apartment and returned to the family home. Then at 5:28, they can see Rosario walking home. So Rosario and Asunta, by the CCTV footage, they can tell are both home. They then get footage at 6:20 p.m. and this is the footage that shows Rosario driving, Asunta in the passenger seat, and they're headed in the direction of the vacation home that the family owns. The vacation home that the family owned had a security system on it. The security system was turned off at the vacation home at 6:35. Then around 7:30 p.m., Rosario's cell phone connected to the internet in the vacation home. Something that's very interesting, and I don't know why people who commit crimes do this, but there was an hour period where both Rosario and Alfonso had their cell phones turned off. Both phones went off at the same time. They were off for about an hour and they both came back on at the same time. And obviously, to the police, this is extremely suspicious. The night and the time that your daughter goes missing, the two parents' cell phones turn off, they're off for an hour, and then they come back on. And I'm not trying to give advice to criminals, but if I was going to give advice to criminals, don't turn your cell phone off. Like, it's the stupidest thing, and people get caught doing this all the time. Look at Brian Koberger, for example, and obviously we don't know if he's guilty, he hasn't gone to trial, whatever. But like, if you're not someone who normally turns your cell phone off, if you're going to commit a crime, highly recommend, after doing so many of these stories, don't turn your cell phone off. It's super suspicious, and the police are going to be looking at you. But I guess it's good that they did, because it helps them get caught for murdering their innocent 12-year-old daughter. So when police question Rosario, saying, okay, so you said that you left Asunta at home doing her homework. Here is a picture of you and Asunta driving to your holiday home, and she's not at home, she's in the car, and she's going with you. So Rosario, she kind of makes this weird explanation as, well, I told her that she should stay home and do her homework. So she was going to stay home. And then Asunta decided that she didn't want to stay home. So she ended up coming. And then Rosario, she does a bunch of weird stuff. She drives to a store, but she claims she didn't go in and buy anything. And then she claims she went to the gas station to get gas, but she didn't have a discount card, so then she didn't end up getting gas. So apparently this woman was just real busy going to places, but not going in and actually purchasing or filling up her tank or anything. So she's really not good at trying to cover up a crime, thank goodness. So as the police are investigating this, the parents tell the police something absolutely insane. They claim that someone broke into their home on either July 4th or July 5th, and this person, they're claiming this mysterious man broke into their home. He didn't steal anything, but he went to Asunta's room and attempted to suffocate her. And the parents caught him and they fled, and they didn't tell the police. Someone explained to me how someone breaks into your home, attempts to kill your child, and you think the best choice is to not mention that to the police. Like, they never reported it to the police. And Rosario, the mom, she claims, well, we didn't report it to the police because I thought it would be traumatizing for Asunta to have to go into the police and relive this. Well, Asunta is now living knowing someone was able to get into her home, attempt to kill her, and nobody has any idea who that person is. So I don't know. I think that would be more traumatizing than Asunta going into a police station, speaking to a police officer, and having the police look into this. So in my opinion, this is a fictitious story, obviously, because I think the interesting thing about this attempted murder is that that's how Asunta ended up dying. She was asphyxiated. So I find it a little bit strange that you have this random man break into your house and attempt to kill your daughter a few months before, in the exact way that when her body is discovered, they will determine that is the cause of death. But that's not the only thing they found when they were doing her autopsy. And just 10 days before Asunta's 13th birthday, her deceased body was found along the side of the road, and it was very close to the family's holiday home. As I had mentioned, the cause of death was asphyxiation, but there was something very disturbing that was found in Asunta's body. She had the equivalent of 23 pills of lorazepam, which I kind of went over in the beginning, are a very strong sedative. And once the coroner found that she had such an extremely high dose of this medication that's not prescribed to her, and I feel like that's not a medication that would be prescribed to children. I think it would be very selective situations, but it was a medication that was prescribed to Rosario. And the police are doing more interviews with like family and friends and just asking kind of general questions, trying to kind of assess the family dynamics and find out, they're investigating her murder. They're trying to find out as much information as they can. And one thing they find out is that Asunta had told people that she was given a white powder that was supposedly for her allergies, which the police then spoke to her doctor, and her doctor said she doesn't have allergies and she's never been prescribed anything for allergies. Then they end up speaking to the school that Asunta goes to, and they find out that Alfonso, her father, had brought her to school on several occasions, and the teachers and administrators at the school described her as being very sedated. She was almost falling asleep. It was hard for her to walk. She was very lethargic, let's say. And those times, whenever she went to school, when she was in this state that the school described to the police officers, she was always accompanied by her father. And when they checked the dates that she had arrived at school, because the school had taken note of it because it was very strange behavior. Well, when they took the information from the school, where the school is saying these are the dates she showed up and seemed, I'm just going to say it, she was drugged. They then take the dates that the school gives them where Asunta had shown up at school in this altered, sort of sedated, very lethargic state, and they compare it to the pharmacy records, and every date that she had shown up at school and was in this condition, her father had been at the pharmacy the day before picking up lorazepam, and he was picking up like 150 pills. So I don't know if maybe, I don't know what the laws regarding prescriptions or lorazepam are in Spain. I'm assuming based on this information. And also this is in 2013. So I think maybe in 2013, maybe the laws were a little more relaxed and there wasn't sort of this awareness that people misuse this medication and people can become addicted to this medication. So he's filling 150 pills on a regular basis. And when the coroner, did the testing on Asunta and realized what high level of lorazepam she had in her system, they did hair sampling. And when they tested her hair, it showed that she had been being drugged for a couple of months prior to her murder. So it seems pretty clear that it was her father, or possibly her father and her mother, or her mother. Somebody was drugging this child, and the father was the person that was picking up the medication that was being used to drug the child. During the investigation, obviously, they want to search the father's apartment. So initially, when they go there, they, police take a lot of photos of everything. And then they came back a couple days later and they were going to do like a full search of his apartment. And they noticed that a bag was missing. and it was the dad's laptop bag. And now, mysteriously, his laptop is missing. And the police are having none of it. They say to the father, we need that laptop. Where is it? Produce it, because we need to search that laptop. So the father ends up giving over the laptop to the police. And it is believed that he removed a hard drive from the laptop before he gave it to the police. Thankfully, him removing that hard drive, which I'm sure had absolutely horrific things on it, because I'm about to tell you the things that were found on his laptop. He had very strange pictures of Asunta. There were a lot of pictures of Asunta, and she looks to be either asleep or unconscious. And I'll add some of the pictures in here. And she's wrapped very tightly with a blanket. And it's almost as though she's being wrapped the way, I know a lot of times people will swaddle a baby and wrap them very tight in a blanket to help soothe them. It almost looks as though that's what she was doing, but she was a 12-year-old girl. But there was also some really suggestive photos of Asunta on his laptop. Now, Asunta, as I had mentioned before, she did dance. So at a dance, competitions or recitals, she would have her makeup done, very heavily makeup, like very heavy makeup on her. And I guess you can have an opinion one way or the other of whether it's an appropriate thing to be dressing up little girls to look like grown women. And I think obviously most people do it and it's completely innocent. In Asunta's case, it was not innocent. Like, she was part of the dance group and she was doing her outfit matched what the other little girls were wearing, her makeup matched what the other little girls were how they had their makeup done. So everything that she was doing, all the other little girls were doing. But the pictures of her in this outfit with this makeup is she would be laying back with her legs spread in a very, it's a very suggestive looking photos of her, basically. There's a lot of photos that would not be considered CP, but they definitely are not normal pictures that you would have of your daughter. Now, when the mother is questioned about these pictures, she says that Asunta was so excited about her recital. When she would get home, she wanted to have her picture taken. And I'm sure that's true. I'm sure, little girls, they go to recitals, they're all dressed up, they've got their hair done. They're probably excited about having makeup on because it's not something they're normally allowed to do. So parents, of course, they get home, parents are going to be taking pictures of them. I don't think any other parents were taking pictures with their child in these poses. But the other thing that was found on his computer was actual CP. Now, it was not of Asunta, but it was young Asian girls. And this now goes back to at the beginning of the video when I had mentioned that I believe they chose China specifically because I believe the father wanted an Asian young girl. And the age in which Asunta was murdered is also particularly significant when you're dealing with these type of vile individuals, because Asunta was 12 turning 13. What is happening to a girl when she is 12 turning 13? She's going through puberty. And these vile people usually have a very strong age preference. And a big cutoff point for most of these sickos is they want prepubescent children. So I very firmly believe that Asunta was killed because she could no longer fulfill what her father wanted her for. And the mother, it's a little bit more confusing with the mother because, and this is just my personal opinion, and some people may disagree with it, but I think if you live in a home and there are adults in that home and a child is being SA'd, I believe any adult living in that home knows what is happening. And I think they either know or they work really, really hard not to know. I don't believe that this goes on in a home. And the thing is, there's obviously situations where there are this thing, these types of evil things are happening and there are adults in the home that don't know. There are obviously situations like that, but I think majority of the time that if there are any other adults in the home, I personally believe they know something is wrong. They know something is happening. And another thing that I know I haven't gotten into a lot of the evidence towards the parents. I mean, obviously she was last seen with her parents. It was her parents were drugging her. There was also twine found close to Asunta's body. So when her body was discovered, she had marks on her wrists and on her ankles that she had been tied. And right beside her body, when it was discovered, they found this orange twine. When the police were at the vacation home to do a search warrant there, Rosario, the mother, was there, and she asked the police officer if she could use the washroom. Now, at this time, she wasn't really a suspect. This was before they suspected that she was involved. So the police were just trying to be kind, and I mean, they shouldn't have, but they did say, yes, you can go and use the washroom. Well, she didn't go to the washroom. She went into a bedroom and she was caught by a police officer picking twine out of the garbage. Guess what color the twine was? Orange. The exact same looking twine that was found next to Asunta's body. Now, the police could never conclusively say that it was the exact same twine, because when police are matching a material like twine, what they do is they match it so that they can say it was cut here and we can tell that these two pieces at one point were connected, and they weren't able to determine that. But I don't know. I think common sense tells you if there's orange twine beside their daughter's dead body, and then the mother, right before they're about to do a search warrant on her home, attempts to go to a garbage and pick out twine that looks exactly the same, I think we can pretty much say it was the same twine. Obviously, legally, they could not use it as evidence, but you're smart people, you can put it together. So at first, just Rosario was arrested. And then they eventually arrest Alfonso. So the police say, okay, why don't we put them beside each other in a cell? So they have a wall in between it, but it's very thin and they can speak to each other through this wall. And the police said, let's put them together and see what they say to each other. So the whole time the two of them are beside each other in this cell, the father, Alfonso, he knows what's going on. He understands that the police are putting them near each other to try to overhear what they're saying. So anytime Rosario, the mother, speaks, he's constantly telling her to be silent, don't say anything. Like, he keeps kind of trying to shut down any conversation between them. So he does his best to get Rosario not to speak. But at one point, she does say, we wouldn't be in this situation if it wasn't for your perverted fantasies. And I'm not quoting that exactly word for word, but she does say perverted fantasies, that's why they're in this situation. So I think it's pretty clear why Asunta was murdered. And I think it's obviously clear that it was her parents that did it. So they go to trial and both of them are convicted. They were both sentenced to life sentences, but a life sentence in Spain, at least at the time, was 18 years. There was a law that was changed so that if a child is murdered, there's a longer sentence can be given to whoever obviously kills the child. But yeah, they were basically both sentenced to 18 years. Both of them tried to appeal their sentences in 2017 and it didn't work and they were denied. And on December 18th, 2020, Rosario was found in her cell and she had self-exited. And this was her third attempt while in prison. And obviously this time she was successful. And Alfonso, the father, is currently still in prison. But yeah, he only has to serve 18 years. So that is the story of poor, sweet little Asunta. She was just an absolutely adorable little girl. And obviously in this case, evidence did come out showing that the father was inappropriate, to say the very least, with his daughter and had some type of sick desire regarding his daughter. But I really am looking to get your opinion on if you think that it was the reason that they adopted from China. One other thing I'll just mention that they talked about in the Netflix show, it doesn't end up having any real significance, but there was contamination when they were testing the clothing that Asunta was wearing. Initially, they thought that there was some semen on her shirt, but they ended up figuring out that there was like cross-contamination when they were doing the DNA testing, and it ended up not being significant to the case. But I just thought I would mention that because it did come up in the Netflix show that there was some stuff happening in the lab that wasn't done correctly, which I think can put into question a lot of evidence. But DNA evidence wasn't really a factor in determining who killed Asunta. So definitely let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on the whole case. I'd love to know what you think. And like, I don't know, it seems whenever this case is discussed, it's always like, oh, it's such a mysterious motive. I don't think it's mysterious at all. I think it's very cut and dry. I think it's very clear, and I think it's very easy to see. So I don't understand why with this case, when it's talked about, like the amount of sources that I read that, you know, the motive is just so mysterious and nobody really knows the motive. I know the motive. I sure as hell know the motive. You know the motive. So I don't know why there's this huge mystery around the motive. I think the motive is crystal fucking clear and it's disgusting. So that is the end of today's video, and there's going to be another video for you. I already have the script written, so I'll record that and upload that in a couple of days. So I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who subscribes, who comments, who likes. You guys are absolutely amazing. I appreciate you so much. And do something today that makes your soul happy, and I will see you in the next one.